in the Kuzari. On page 103. We were talking about the fact that we don't believe in a physical God. This is it's obvious. Every Jew knows this. We say this in the end of Tefillah. Yigdal Elohim Chai Ve'yishtabach Nimtzav Ve'netel Me'yotziuto. Right? Elo guf ve'eno demut haguf. He doesn't have a body. He doesn't even have a likeness to a body. You cannot say Hashem has a hand or something similar to a hand. He doesn't have such a thing. Hashem is not a physical being. We don't believe in a physical Hashem. So, here's the real question. What do you do with the fact that the Torah itself uses phrases that seem to imply physicality when speaking about Hashem?
It's anthropomorphizing so we can understand something that's unable to be understood.
They say that you're trying to slip some problems under the carpet.
It's not a problem.
No, don't read it literally. Just read it as a metaphor, as anthropomorphism.
There's metaphorical language all through all of literature.
But who says this one is... So, that was last week.
Okay.
This week, we have a different question. Being said that we don't believe in a physical Hashem, and we know that what it says in the Torah is not meant to be taken literally.
Of course not.
So how do we deal with the fact that Hashem spoke? Not a mouth. We didn't say something. Hashem spoke and we heard something, right?
Yeah.
Speech is a physical action. Hearing sound waves is a physical action. Hashem split the sea. I don't care that he didn't use his hand, but he still accomplished something physical. If my Hashem is spiritual, per se, how could he accomplish something physical? This is the question we're going to be dealing with now.
Well, why would you make the assumption that a physical being doesn't have any influence on physicality? I mean, clearly he did. He does. He created the whole earth. I mean, from the very beginning, from the very Bereshit of the first bet of the
Well, that's
Torah.
the question. If he created, how did you create... Imagine this. Imagine you want to write your name on a piece of paper. So you sit there looking at the piece of paper, willing your name to be on the piece of paper. It's never going to happen.
I'm not Hashem.
No, man, but I'm asking you, this is an idea that... How could you say Hashem wrote on paper if he didn't use a pen or a pencil?
Because he's Hashem. He's not us. He's not a physical being. He's not limited to what...
Do you understand the question?
Yes, but...
So first understand the question. The question is, how could it be that Hashem accomplishes physical things if he's not physical?
He's not a physical.
But why are you assuming that something that's not physical doesn't affect physicality? I mean, that's an assumption you're making, and I don't think that's a valid assumption. You have all kinds of energy that you don't see. It affects our lives right now.
What kind of energy?
All kinds of energy.
Things that can be quantified.
Gravity, for example. Or
Radio waves,
electromagnetic
we don't see them, but they're there.
Yeah. Electromagnetic radiation.
No, you're making a mistake.
Okay.
And the mistake is, we say Hashem does not have a body, nor a likeness to a body. He's not physical, nor any likeness to physicality.
Okay.
A radio wave may not be physical in the sense that you can't touch it, but you can quantify it, you can isolate it, you can say there is something, it's called a radio wave. You might not see it, but you can hear it, right?
But that's the paradigm that gives you an idea that there is something that doesn't appear to be physical, that does have an influence on physical beings. So Hashem is not electromagnetic radiation, but...
So the Kuzari wants to know, you're telling me on one hand you don't believe in a physical God, so I accept that. I accept that your God is not physical, but then what do you do with all the stories in your Torah that he does things which are physical? So the rabbi answers the Kuzari as follows. You might not like his answer. So Namnam Hadin Aleinu, it's our obligation, Shelo nidche ma shekibalnu min hama'amadahu.
Where are you?
I'm translating my own English, not what it says here.
Okay, but where?
We nevertheless cannot deny what happened at Sinai. V'nomar, we must say, she'en anachnu yodim, we don't know exactly. Ech nigsham ha'inyan, ad sheshav dibur v'karat oznenu. We don't exactly know how Hashem's manifestation turned into an actual physical speech that penetrated our ears. ולא מה שברא לו יתברך ממה שלא היה נמצא וכל מה שהעביר לו מן הנמצאים. Nor do we understand how Hashem created a new physical object where one did not exist previously. That's a concept, that's a crazy concept. To create something out of nothing. You know, even the magicians who like to pretend that they create things. Now, we obviously know they don't, but the idea is they took one thing and turn it into another thing. They don't generally pull things out of the air.
No.
The idea is creating one thing from another thing. Wow, that's supernatural. creating something from nothing is already a whole different concept. By the way, we're starting a new class, a little bit
You are?
Yeah. 2 new classes, actually, after Chanukah, God willing.
The Tanya?
One of them is called Tanya from a different angle.
Oh, good. What is it going to be?
We don't know yet, but we're going to be talking to whoever wants to be. If you tell me you want to be part of the class, we'll figure out a time that works for everybody.
Just not Monday
Okay?
night.
So it might even be like a middle of the day kind of thing. I don't know. We don't know.
Okay.
One hour class?
It will be probably 45 minutes. It'll be a little bit shorter than our normal classes.
I'm coming.
And then the second class is going to be a class on Sephardic Kabbalah.
Well, I'm coming.
Which we'll be doing probably the first series, which might even take us up to a year, would be analyzing the 13 attributes of Hashem and the 10 sfirot of Kabbalah,
Wow.
and figuring out how to develop ourselves as people based on that formula. So, B'ezrat Hashem, both of these classes are very different than what we've been teaching until now, but thank God now is the right time to start bringing some of our bigger ammo out of the box. So that's what we're doing now.
Wow.
And this is after
Hanukkah, we have to, because if we start now, then we'll break it up, and better to start and a clean. We're going to have till Pesach to go straight.
So you're adding to these classes that you already have.
Yes, we're not changing.
So you already have Monday, Tuesday, Thursday.
Right. Now, someone might say, listen, I would like to have the class, but it's too hard. So we might have to start thinking of a conference calling the classes. That might also be an option. I'd rather classes with people there, but especially that they'll be shorter. They won't be such a big commitment. You'll come in at X and you'll leave exactly at Y, and they won't be schleppy kind of classes. There'll be courses more than...
Will there be a textbook involved?
Yes, all of the classes that I teach will have textbooks. I rarely teach without a textbook.
It sounds wonderful.
Yeah, that's wonderful, yeah. I like it.
So, Baruch Hashem. Now you know. You're the first people to know.
Wow.
The Tanya was on Facebook, but the other one I didn't let
I
anyone
didn't know about this other one, yeah.
I have to go on
Just
Facebook.
let us know what books we need.
I'll let you know. B'ezrat Hashem. As soon as
So
we...
Facebook, I just go into a Facebook and I
to
just
create an account.
I have
like
an
an email.
account. I have an account.
So look up Yonatan Halevy
Oh.
and Kehillat Shaar HaShamayim, and you'll find everything. All right. So says. I would tell Barry to edit this part out, but Barry's not here.
Oh.
Barry's in Korea, and we're thinking
He
about him.
is? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
He comes back
Business.
Sunday.
Hey.
Business with his work.
So says Rabbi Yonatan Halevy. Ki lo yichsar lo yicholet. We all know one thing, that there's nothing that Hashem can't do. Okay? So Hashem is able... Thank you! Wow! Hashem is able to create something physical, not using any physical elements, right? And the fact that we don't understand, okay, but we understand that Hashem is capable of everything. For example, there's a famous question that people ask: can God create a stone that He cannot lift? And every rabbi that I've heard ask that question, the rabbi always says, please don't ask me stupid questions. I said the truth is, it's not as stupid of a question as rabbis would like it to be. The problem is that sometimes the rabbis are too stupid to have an answer to the question. And that's why they're not answering the question. The idea is that this is a real question. Is HaKadosh Baruch Hu limited by His greatness?
No.
Can you limit Hashem by His greatness? Maybe here I'm going to take a tangent that I should not be taking. It was not intended to be taken here. But on a basic level, no heresy should come out of this idea. This is just an idea that if you want to know more about, don't jump to conclusions. Ask me about it and we'll talk about it. One of the people say, what did Kabbalah bring to the table? What did it really bring? Now I'll tell you, for me, Kabbalah is not all about mystical amulets and days of the month where you can't do things and if you should stand upside down on Tuesdays or on Wednesdays. It's not, for me, that's not, when I say Kabbalah, that's not what I refer to. The philosophy that Kabbalah brought to the table is a very empowering philosophy, empowering Jewish philosophy, which was necessary, perhaps because Jews had picked up on many world religions, which caused us to be unempowered Jews. I'll explain what I mean. Can Hashem create a stone that He cannot lift? It's a complicated question.
Yeah.
And the Kabbalist's answer to this question is yes and no. Yes. There is a Hashem who is great, all-knowing, all-powerful. So that element of Hashem cannot have something that He can't do. That element of Hashem cannot have a stone that He cannot lift, because that part of Hashem is all-powerful.
Yeah.
Now, that's really a perfect being is one who's all-powerful. But there's something greater than being perfect, and that's being more perfect. Now, a person doesn't have to be more perfect.
Maybe more perfect.
I'll explain.
Oh,
Very good.
hi.
A person doesn't have to be more perfect. A person is okay with being perfect. Hashem also doesn't have to be more perfect. Could choose to be more perfect, but doesn't need to be more perfect. In order to understand what I'm saying, let's talk about a rich kid. He was born to a rich family. His father grew up in a broken home. Problems and problems and problems. Thrown out of this school, moved to the next school. Finally, his father hit around the age of 18, and his father says, "Hey, I gotta get my life in order." And the father says, I'm gonna go to college. I'm gonna get myself a job. But how do you go to college if you don't have money? He started flipping burgers at McDonald's. Flipping burgers, waiting tables, cleaning buildings at night, and it paid him way through college. It took him about 6 years instead of 4 years, but he made his way. He got himself a pretty entry-level job, but he built himself up. He opened up his own company. Fast forward 30 years later, this man is one of the richest men in the world. He has a son. When the father passes this inheritance to the son, who's a wealthier person? The son or the father? Who's wealthier? A person who's an accountant will tell you they're equally wealthy. If the father had $100 billion and he passed it to the son has $100 billion, equally wealthy. A man of Torah will tell you that they're both wealthy. But the father is more wealthy than the son.
Because he made it.
Because the father experienced what it was to not have, and now he appreciates what he does have.
So it's an emotional wealth.
Yes, it's an emotional wealth, which is attached to the value of money.
More because we started with nothing.
Yes. Now, God forbid that you should understand this in a physical way. To Hashem. Hashem is perfect. Hashem is all the world. Hashem is the world. Hashem is, was, will be, and always was. Forever and ever and ever. Hashem, Haya, Haviviyah. Adon HaKol is the master of everything. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, at a point in time that was the creation of this world, chose to be more perfect. This is what Kabbalah brings us to. Hashem chose to be more perfect. How did he choose to be more perfect? Perhaps Hashem wanted to experience what it was like to not be all-powerful, to not be all-knowing, to not be godly. Now you can imagine why you're feeling uncomfortable in your seats, the same reason why the early Sephardic sages opposed Kabbalah, as well as the early Ashkenazi sages, because it sounded kind of heretical to them, this idea. But if you will let me take it a little bit further, I'll explain. Perhaps when a man, we say a human being is a chelek Eloha mimal. He's a bit of Hashem from above. It's true that Hashem doesn't fail. And Hashem doesn't make mistakes. But Hashem created you. And when you fail, it's actually a success for Hashem. You've now enabled what's called Yud Kei Vav Kei to experience what is failure. Because Hashem, being Hashem, is not able to experience failure. Hashem didn't need us. Hashem didn't need this experience. We were accountants. Hashem chose to be more perfect. And by choosing to be more perfect, He chooses to live a certain part of reality through us. Along came a man called Baruch Spinoza. You've heard me mention him today, not today, in this class before. Baruch Spinoza took this a step too far. He says, well, if we are the part of Hashem that lives in this world, that breathes, that suffers, then we must be equal partners in Hashem. And Hashem is essentially us. And this world is essentially Hashem. And so I'm God. And you're God. And all together we're God. And this is totally he missed the boat. In math, we would say if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C, right? It doesn't work this way in Kabbalah. Because Kabbalah, I don't know if you're familiar so much in the depths, doesn't work according to Aristotelian logic.
It doesn't work according to math either. A whole is all the parts. Parts are not all the
Right.
whole.
So Aristotelian logic is this idea of 1 + 2 is 3. If two things contradict, then we don't work according to this system of logic. And therefore the idea that I wish to bring out now was we do know that Hashem is all-powerful. Hashem is not physical. But you cannot limit Hashem by calling Him not physical. And therefore if we would say Hashem is so not physical that He couldn't have been the one to split the sea, we would essentially be limiting Hashem, and limiting Hashem would make him, by very definition, not Hashem. Because Hashem cannot be contained. He cannot be limited. And when Christianity comes down to the table and brought this idea that God became into a man's form. So unfortunately today, it's not just Christianity. There are some extreme sects in Judaism, I wouldn't even call them a sect, maybe a few hundred people, who want to believe that even a certain rabbi is a part of God. And God went into this rabbi's body and he lived. Crazy people. But this idea of Hidgashmut, as we called it before, is so far away from our understanding of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We don't know how Hashem wrote on tablets without using a pen or an engraver. We don't care though. Because for us, Hashem is able to create physical tablets or split the sea without actually being physical. Rabbi Nachman of Breslov has a book, Likutei Moharan, which if you don't own, I suggest you do. But I warn you with caution. Rabbi Nachman's Chassidut is dangerous. Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach once met Rav Kook's son. Rav Kook's son once asked his father, Rav Kook, am I allowed to learn Rabbi Nachman's Chassidut? And he said, yes, only once you know the entire Torah backwards and forwards by heart.
Wow.
Rabbi Nachman was not a simple person. And the problem is that his Chassidut attracts very simple people. Because he was a Rebbe of simple people. He was a Rebbe that wanted to open up the whole world to everybody. But some people don't understand that some of his teachings are not meant to be interpreted literally the way he actually said them. And I'm not saying that I know how to interpret Rabbi Nachman better than Breslovers do, but rather a Breslover rabbi would tell you that you don't take everything Rabbi Nachman says in face value. He generally is referring to much deeper concepts than we would like. And there are some things Rabbi Nachman said that I can't vouch for. They go against things that we know to be correct. They go against Shulchan Aruch. They go against beliefs that we have in our belief system. Okay, so I have a question mark on Rabbi Nachman. It doesn't take away from his greatness. But Rav Kook was warning his son, it's not the right place to start. There's a lot of question marks in this Chassidut. So do it later. But Rabbi Nachman's Chassidut is very inspirational. It brings a lot of hope to the world. And so it's an important thing to at least be slightly familiar with his Chassidut. It would be a mistake to ignore it. Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, Rav Kook's son, once met Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach. And he asked Rav Shlomo Carlebach, said, Rav Shlomo, what do you do with drug addicts? What Torah do you teach them that saves them from their drug addiction? And Rav Shlomo Carlebach said, I teach them the Torah of the Ishbitzer Rebbe, who was also a powerful Rebbe. These are not like human beings, they're like superhumans almost. The Ishbitzer Rebbe, and I teach them the Torah of Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. Rav Tzvi Yehuda Kook said, I understand why you're so successful. I understand why you're successful with the drug addicts. Because you take them off of one drug and you give them a different drug instead. The truth is, it's very powerful Torah, and it should be taken in small doses with the proper guidance from a person who understands in the Chassidut. I'm saying that out of the greatness of Rabbi Nachman, not out of a bad approach to Rabbi Nachman. Just like I wouldn't recommend for you tomorrow morning to start reading the book of Raziel HaMalach. It's not, certain things are above our pay grades, and if we never reach that place, nothing happened to us. Rabbi Nachman says that your emunah, not faith, but this deep connection to Hashem, begins where your mind ends. So your logic can understand Hashem up until the highest place of Hashem is not physical. Hashem is Hashem. Hashem created the world. Hashem is I am living inside of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Start to ask the questions of, so how could Hashem do something physical if He's not physical? Says Rabbi Nachman, you want to understand it? You already have to leave. Your logic can't comprehend such a thing because it's not logical. And therefore you have to enable what's called emunah. Emunah is not so much a faith, as much more it's an experience. What I mean? It says, Ta'amu re'u ki tov Hashem. It says in the Tanakh that a person must taste and he'll see that Hashem is good. What does it mean? I could tell you your whole life what chicken soup tastes like. I can explain to you, it's a little bit salty, it's a little bit oily, a little bit this, it looks like that. But what you can experience just tasting a spoon of chicken soup, I would have saved myself 30 years of explanations.
Or 1,000 words.
1,000 words, right? We can sit here all we want trying to break our head. Hashem is this, Hashem is that, Hashem is not. Or I can tell you, stop for a second. Experience Hashem through the Torah. Study it. Live it. Act according to it. You won't have these questions about Hashem. your emunah will already kick in, and I understand. Because I feel it in my bones, I understand. But this you can't explain to somebody on the street. And even somebody out there in YouTube land who would listen to this class would say, the rabbi is crazy over here. Man, what is he talking about? It sounds like an easy gimmick. Just try it and it'll work for you. That's how we believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. As Rabbi Yonatan Halevy continues. And he says, כאשר נאמר כי הוא יתברך ברא את הלוחות וכתב אותם כתב חרוט, when we say that Hashem created the tablets and engraved the 10 commandments upon them, כאשר ברא את השמיים במאמרו בלבד, just as he created the heavens with his utterance alone. Rabbi Karabkin points out here in the footnotes, the reason why he uses the heavens specifically, as well as the tablets, is because both of them the Torah uses that it were written and they were made, created by the Etzba Elohim, the finger of Hashem. So he didn't just pick two examples out of his hat. These are two examples the Torah specifically mentions that Hashem did with his finger. He's saying, even though that's what it is, Hashem willed, and according to that will, the tablets assumed their proper shape and size. The commandments were engraved into the tablets with the same force that Hashem split the sea, and he created walls out of them, and they stood to the right and to the left of us. Now, by the way, as Rabbi Krabkin points out, there is a midrash in Tanchumah that tells us that Hashem split the sea 12 ways. One for each of the tribes, right?
No.
Mm-hmm.
They say today he would have to do 24 ways. One for each tribe, the man, and one for each tribe, the woman, right? That would have to happen. God forbid they should cross together. But the idea here,
We're so holy.
the idea here is that it seems that either Rabbi Yonatan Halevy doesn't believe that that's actually what happened. He doesn't follow this midrash, or he didn't feel it necessary to specify if there were 12 or there were 1. He just says split, and they were on each side of the nation. Umsilot mesudarot uchavot, and there were pathways in the middle which were organized and they were wide. Ve'eretz yeshara yilchu ba, and there was a straight land that they could walk across. Mibli torach v'lo ikuv, and they walked without any kind of hesitation or any kind of obstacles. It was clear, it wasn't muddy, it was perfect the way Hashem wished it to happen, but it wasn't done through a physical force. This is an important idea. We say a lady in the morning, some poskim, not all poskim agree. Some poskim mention, she says, Sha'asani kirtzona, he created me according to his will. This idea of Ritzon Hashem, the will of Hashem. I just heard a shir from Rabbi Rosenbaum. My wife and I were listening to one of his classes. Rabbi Rosenbaum, he's my rabbi who came for Elchanan's Brit, if you remember. Ritzon Hashem, divine will, is a very deep concept, even in Halakha. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu wills something into being, he didn't create it by building it with blocks or matter. He willed it into creation. It would be the equivalent, for example, of you sitting and saying, I want to write my name on a piece of paper without using a pen. And it will just appear on the piece of paper.
Okay.
Now, even a magician can do it. He has to use a magic wand. Yeah. Obviously, we know magicians are not real. I'm using the example that HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't need to use his hands or even angels or other creations.
He created with his will.
Yes. Let's read one more paragraph.
Power, but it's also will.
Will. Let me just read one last paragraph so we can finish this concept today, because next week we're going to get to a very interesting question. The Chet HaEgel, the sin of the golden calf, and where does that play into... We're trying to market ourselves to the king, the Kuzari king. And he's not going to buy it, because listen, you guys don't even believe in God. Look at your golden calf. We're going to have to deal with that, God willing, next week. We have good answers, don't worry.
Thanksgiving.
Oh, so we'll discuss what we do on Thanksgiving. Probably Thursday night is Thanksgiving?
Yeah.
So the next week.
Oh.
I don't know. I'm not eating turkeys on Thursday, but if you were busy somewhere, then we'll move the class. וכן הקריאה והבניין והתיקון מיוחס אליו יתברך. Furthermore, we believe that all that happened at the Red Sea, the splitting of the water, its suspension in midair, and the pathways created for the Jews in the middle and dry land, לא נצטרך בו אל כלי ולא אל סיבות אמצעיות כאשר יצטרך בפועל הבירואים. All these miracles are attributable directly to God. God required no tools or intermediaries to accomplish all this. כאשר יצטרך בפועל הבירואים, unlike human beings who do require tools and intermediaries. כי המים עמדו במאמרו, the water stood with his words, ונצטיירו בחפצו, and they sculpted into pathways by his desire alone. וכן יצטייר האוויר המגיע על אוזן הנביא בצורות האותיות, שהם מורות על עניינים שהוא חפץ להשמיעם על הנביא ועל ההמון. Similarly, Hashem is able to create sound waves that form words by the time they reach the prophet's ear, and those words convey what Hashem wants to communicate to the prophet or the people. As they mentioned at the bottom, it's not like the way the philosophers wanted to say, but what he's saying is Hashem didn't need intermediaries in order to do this. There were no angels in the middle here, there were no tools that he used. These things are physical things that we attribute to Hashem himself, who is absolutely not physical. What does the king say about that? Amar Kuzari, says the king, Zot ha'te'ana maspeket. This suffices to explain your belief in a non-physical God who works within the physical universe. Says the king, I accept. I accept.
He accepted it. He accepted his explanation.
Yes.
So he understood.
I understood.
Pretty good.
Which is why for today, I didn't elaborate so much outside of the book of the Kuzari. I think we did more pages today than we've done in a long time. The idea being that these words itself, they're deep, but the king understood them as they were said. So we could understand them the way Rabbi Yonatan Halevy said them, without having to jump around. So for today, let's end off on the note that the king understood, we understand. B'ezrat Hashem, next time we meet, we'll be discussing all about the Chet HaEgel, the sin of the golden calf, how that plays into our history, what consequences that has. But B'ezrat Hashem, for right now, we're at a good place in the book. B'ezrat Hashem. Can you imagine that it was now, this time of year? How many years already?
Oh, it was a long time. It was in the old place.
It was in the old place, my first year there.
Yeah. The first time there was like 40 people.
Like
there.
in January 24th?
3 years ago.
3 years
Now,
ago?
this is we're finishing our third year now, going into our fourth year of Kuzari.
Wow.
Wow, 100 pages in 3 years? 30
Isn't that
pages
long?
a year?
Wow.
And the book,
Only 103 pages.
and Marlene, should I make it worse for you though?
No.
It's not 100 pages. The book only started on like page
Oh, really?
page 47. But this is what I wish for you. People always tell me this. Why does it take us so long to move so far, so slowly? People learn emunah, belief in Hashem, as if it's like something like after. Oh yeah, well we believe in Hashem. These are concepts that Rabbi Yonatan Halevy, when he wrote such a book, remember what the Vilna Gaon said about this book? All of the faith of the Jewish people rests in this book alone. This book alone.
Well,
Ki he emunat Yisrael, says the Vilna Gaon. This book is the book. And so when Rabbi Yonatan Halevy writes such a work, it includes in it so many ideas that it's a mistake. People who, I went to a student, they asked me which book he should learn. I told him, go get this book. 2 days later, he said, okay, I want my next book. I said, what do you mean, he said, this book was real. I'll tell you which book it was. It was Rabbi Avraham ben Rambam, the book the Rambam's son, what we learned in the Kola. He said, you can't read that book. He said, you can read it in 2 days, but you can't, come, give me a hand. You can't learn it.
No, not really.
To learn something really in depth takes time. And from all the books in the world that are worth taking time and learning, this is a good book.